According to today's bibliography of Atlantis, the mysterious continent buried somewhere on the bottom of the ocean, written over 20,000 scientific works and adventure works. The Sunato has over 1,700 hypotheses about her whereabouts and the reasons for the disappearance. Is it really untapped? One of the major versions of the continent went too far in the absence of a terrible cataclysm, probably even an armed conflict of about 9,000 years ago. Atlanta is a civilization of great Atlanteans, also known as the possible descendants of the Lemurians. There are many historical chronicles about it, if you draw information from the Greek myths about Atlantis. You can learn that in the beginning of the world, when the Olympic gods divided the land of Poseidon, it was Atlanta itself. He made her bearish and rich. She was assimilated by people. The king had a daughter, Cleito, which very much fell to the heart of Poseidon. After the death of her parents from Poseidon, Cleito gave birth to 5 pairs of twins, who shared power among themselves on the whole island. For many generations, the Atlanteans wisely ruled the island, and over time they were less and less left divine wisdom and more human greed. With enormous power they conquered many lands, and Zeus gathered a meeting of the gods to stop them. Ancestors of the Athenians rebelled against the invaders and won, despite the fact that they were betrayed by the allies. After that, in one day, the land under Atlantis swung and swallowed the island. At that place, there was a place with a silt, which since then it was impossible to cross the ship, Timaeus, and cover, Plato, ancient works, in 421 BCE. Greek philosopher Plato in his 2 works, Timaeus and Critias, outlined the history and sad end of the island-state of Atlantis. The story in the form of dialogue is led by the great-grandfathers of Plato, Crete. He transmits the content of the conversation with his grandfather. He heard the story of Atlantis from his contemporary, Solon, the Athenian legislator and the poet, who, in turn, learned about Atlantis from the Egyptian priest. And Plato in his texts repeatedly emphasizes that this is not a myth, but a true story about historical events. Atlantis, according to Plato, is a huge island, lying in the ocean behind the Hercules Pillars, that is, behind Gibraltar. In the center of the island there was a hill, on which were the temples and the royal palace. Acropolis, the upper city, defended 2 rows of earthen embankments and 3 water ring channels. The outer ring was connected to the sea by a 500-meter canal, on which the ships entered the inner port. The life of Atlantis is full of well-being. Many in the 20th and 21st centuries have traversed the ocean floor of the Atlantic Ocean. But basically this required expensive funding, and found nothing unusual. But there are some that prove that they have really seen the underwater ruins, the remains of columns, rooms or roads and other objects. But if we take the scientific approach, about 10 to 11,000 years ago, there was a cataclysm, after which the ocean swallowed Atlantis. Then it is logical to assume that this is what, besides perhaps written facts or folklore, we did not remain an inheritance of the ancestral homeland of many nations.